Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily strategic briefing. It is Tuesday, March 24, 2026. I'm your co-host, Anna. Today's episode is brought to you by AI and DJAMGAMIND. Today, the tech industry's isolation from the real world has officially ended. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East has shut down the Strait of Hormuz and severely damaged Qatar's helium production, a gas that is absolutely critical to cooling the semiconductors that run the AI industry. We're tracking how this is forcing hyperscalers to abandon billions of dollars in UAE data center investments. On the software side, Anthropic just gave Claude the ability to remotely hijack your mouse and keyboard to do your work for you. We're also covering Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang's shocking claim that AGI is already here, Luma AI's new Uni-1 model, and OpenAI's decision to permanently kill Sora to focus on a new $10 billion raise. Let's get into the news.
You know, it's funny. Usually when we talk about the cloud or about artificial intelligence, there's this underlying expectation of weightlessness.
Oh, absolutely. It feels almost like magic.
Right. Exactly. You just, open your laptop, you type a prompt into whatever language model, and the result just sort of beams down from the ether.
Right. There's this illusion of just infinite, frictionless scaling. We're totally sold this idea that intelligence is now just a utility, like turning on a tap.
Like water. Yeah. It feels completely detached from the physical world.
It does. I mean, when you're interacting with a really highly responsive language model, it feels like pure mathematics, like pure thought.
Right.
You definitely aren't thinking about the massive industrial infrastructure that's actually required to generate that thought.
No, because it's clean. It's totally invisible to us on the user end.
And that invisibility is incredibly comforting, We really like to think of technological progress as this inevitable, unburdened upward curve.
Like it just goes up and to the right forever.
Exactly. We assume that just because software can be copied infinitely for zero cost, well, then the intelligence generated by that software must follow the exact same rules.
But then, and this is where today's focus comes in, you step into the world of global hardware supply chains.
Oh, yeah.
Energy grids, and frankly, raw geopolitics. And suddenly that invisible cloud crashes violently into concrete, steel, and liquid cooling.
The illusion of weightlessness it shatters entirely.
It really does. So welcome to a very specialized DJAMGAMIND deep dive. Today, we are setting a very high stakes, purely forensic tone for you.
System 2 perspective.
Exactly. System 2 all the way. Whether you're managing an enterprise tech stack, tracking macroeconomic trends, or just, trying to understand where the future of your own personal computer is heading, we're bringing you a highly analytical perspective.
We have to slow down. We really need to look past the shiny press releases and the viral social media posts.
Right, a hype cycle.
Yeah, to examine the underlying mechanisms, the structural realities, and the actual physical constraints of the systems we're building.
So let me outline the stack of sources we're unpacking for you today. We're looking at the March 24th AI Daily News Rundown.
Right.
This covers the latest from Anthropic, OpenAI, Meta, the ongoing Middle East conflict, and some really alarming new security data from Cisco. Our mission today is to connect these seemingly completely disparate dots into a single, cohesive geopolitical and technological map.
And just to jump in here and set the parameters for our analysis today.
Please do.
Because our stack of sources involves the ongoing military conflict in the Middle East, specifically between Iran and the U.S. and its direct impact on the tech sector, it is crucial to note right up front. We aren't looking at this conflict through a political lens today.
No, not at all.
We're looking at it strictly as a forensic supply chain issue. So regardless of the politics, the narratives, or the justifications of the actors involved, the physical reality is that critical infrastructure is being targeted.
Right.
We are impartially mapping how those physical disruptions constrain global artificial intelligence development. That is the sole objective lens for this deep dive.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have to start with the grandest contradiction of them all, I think.
The AGI stuff.
Yeah. On one side of our map, we have these soaring, almost utopian claims about artificial general intelligence. And on the exact opposite side, we have the incredibly grounding and honestly sobering reality of what it actually costs to build the scaffolding for it.
The contrast right now is just, it's sharper than it has ever been in the history of the industry. I mean, the rhetoric is diverging from the financial reality at breakneck speed.
Let's start with that rhetoric. So Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang recently sat down for an interview on the Lex Fridman podcast.
Right, I saw that.
And when the topic of AGI timelines came up, like, when are we actually going to hit? Artificial general intelligence didn't give a 5-year prediction.
No, he didn't.
He didn't say the end of the decade. He literally said, I think it's now. I think we've achieved AGI.
Which is an incredibly bold statement.
Huge. He pointed specifically to the new wave of agentic tools, arguing that they could theoretically build and run a viral app completely on their own, like without any human intervention.
And what's fascinating here is the source of the claim. This isn't just some random startup founder trying to hype a new product.
No, it's Jensen Huang.
Right. This is the CEO of the company that produces the hardware backbone for the entire AI revolution. He is publicly declaring that the finish line, or at least, a historically defining milestone, has already been crossed.
And here's my pushback on this. Claiming we have AGI right now feels a bit like saying we've invented a warp drive, but we're still rationing the gasoline needed to power the laboratory.
That's a great analogy.
There's this massive disconnect between the capability being claimed and the physical financial scaffolding required to actually deploy it at scale.
Well, and if we connect Huang's statement to the broader financial architecture of the industry, it's not just a philosophical musing on a podcast. It is a legal and financial earthquake.
Oh, because of the contracts.
Exactly. Because within the foundational documents of the modern AI industries specifically, that massive partnership contract between OpenAI and Microsoft AGI isn't just a vague philosophical concept. It is a highly specific, highly consequential trigger mechanism.
The escape clause. I've read a bit about this, but I don't think most people realize how explicitly it's defined in the paperwork.
Right. Most people think AGI just means a really smart chatbot. But OpenAI's contract with Microsoft includes escape clauses that are tied directly to the achievement of AGI. And they don't define AGI by whether a model can, pass a bar exam or build a viral app.
Right.
It defines AGI as an autonomous system that surpasses humans in most economically valuable tasks. And they have actually quantified that in their legal framework.
Wait, there's a dollar amount attached to it?
Yes. AGI is officially achieved when an AI model is capable of generating $100 billion in profit.
In profit, not revenue.
Pure profit, $100 billion.
That is an astronomical threshold. I mean,
It's massive. And if that definition is met, the nature of the OpenAI-Microsoft relationship fundamentally changes overnight.
How so?
Well, Microsoft currently has a perpetual license to OpenAI's technology, right?
Right. They basically get to use whatever OpenAI builds.
Exactly. But if OpenAI builds a model that hits that $100 billion profit mark, that specific model is legally classified as AGI, and Microsoft's license to it essentially evaporates. OpenAI retains sole control of the AGI.
Oh, wow. Which means Microsoft is essentially funding the very research that could legally lock them out of the ultimate prize.
Precisely. It's a massive risk for them, and we are seeing the corporate maneuvers reflecting this immense tension right now.
Like what?
Well, the sources indicate that Microsoft is actively preparing for a possible split. They are heavily restructuring their internal AI division right now. They're pivoting hard to focus on building and controlling their own proprietary models, rather than just, relying entirely on OpenAI's pipeline.
So they see the writing on the wall.
They see the AGI threshold approaching, and they are building parallel infrastructure so they aren't left totally empty-handed when the escape clause is triggered.
Wow. And that tension is really mounting over OpenAI's latest funding round, and these competing partnerships are just creating this incredible friction. Which brings us to the brutal physical realities we mentioned earlier.
The rationing the gasoline part of your analogy.
Exactly. Let's look at the actual financial documents OpenAI recently shared with investors.
Those documents are sobering, to say the least.
Yeah.
They had to officially flag their heavy reliance on Microsoft as a severe business risk, noting that Microsoft provides a substantial portion of its financing and, way more importantly, its actual compute power.
But the number that truly stopped me in my tracks in these documents is the forward-looking projection. Listen to this. OpenAI has roughly $665 billion in compute spend commitments through the year 2030.
It's just staggering.
Let's pause on that for you listening. $665 billion. You read a number like that, and the human brain almost rejects it. It just slides right off.
It's incredibly difficult to contextualize.
I mean, that is not a software budget. That is the gross domestic product of a medium-sized European nation committed entirely to the rental of physical computer chips and the electricity required to keep them from melting. How does a single company even structure a commitment like that?
Well, it fundamentally changes what kind of company OpenAI is forced to be.
What do you mean?
You cannot sustain a $665 billion compute commitment by selling $20 monthly subscriptions to casual users who just want to, write funny poems or summarize a PDF.
Right, the math doesn't work.
It's mathematically impossible to service that kind of physical infrastructure debt. You have to pivot entirely to the enterprise. You have to become the foundational operating system for the global Fortune 500.
Which perfectly explains the most shocking product news in this stack of sources today. OpenAI is officially shutting down Sora.
Yeah, the video generation platform.
Yes, the tool that literally broke the internet when it was announced. The tool that was generating these hyper-realistic minute-long videos from simple text prompts. I mean, everyone thought this was going to revolutionize Hollywood.
And they are just killing it.
Gone. The official Sora account on X posted that they are saying goodbye, acknowledging the disappointment of the community. And a week prior, the Wall Street Journal reported that Fidji Simo, OpenAI's CEO of applications, told staffers they were shifting all focus to productivity applications for enterprises.
And actively moving away from what they called side quests.
Side quests. That is incredibly telling language.
Generating high-fidelity video is computationally exhaustive. It burns so much energy.
Walk me through the mechanics of that. Why is generating a 1-minute video of, a dog walking in the snow so much more expensive than generating a 10-page essay on the French Revolution?
It comes down to the dimensionality of the data. When an AI generates text, it is essentially just predicting the next word or token in a sequence. A 10-page essay might be a few thousand tokens. It's a linear calculation.
Right, straight down the line.
But video adds the dimensions of space and time. A 1-minute high-definition video isn't a sequence of words. It's a sequence of thousands of individual, highly detailed images displayed at 30 or 60 frames per second.
Oh, wow.
The model has to calculate the lighting, the physics, the spatial consistency of every single pixel across thousands of frames. It burns through GPU cycles at an astonishing rate.
So it's basically setting money on fire for the sake of a cool parlor trick.
Exactly. If you are staring down the barrel of a $655 billion compute commitment, you simply cannot afford to let consumers burn your precious compute on generating, slop feeds of AI video.
Right.
You need every available flop of processing power dedicated to high-margin, enterprise-grade reasoning tasks, code generation, legal analysis, financial modeling, because that is where the $100 billion profit threshold is.
And what's wild is that they are killing this highly visible, highly popular consumer tool at the exact same moment they are raising a literal mountain of capital.
Oh, the new funding round.
Yeah, Bloomberg reports OpenAI is nearing a deal for $10 billion in fresh funding. We're talking money from Abu Dhabi's MGX, Coatue Management, Thrive Capital, and this new round is going to value OpenAI at a staggering $730 billion.
Let's really think about what that valuation actually means. A $730 billion valuation. That is on top of the $110 billion in funds they announced just last month from Amazon, Nvidia, and SoftBank.
It's insane.
For comparison, their fiercest rival, Anthropic, just completed a $30 billion round, also involving MGX, by the way, valuing them at $380 billion. These are nation-state levels of capital concentration.
Oh, yeah.
We are seeing sovereign wealth funds placing bets on foundational AI models as if they are securing access to a new global reserve currency.
So let me get this straight. We have Jensen Huang claiming we have AGI, which threatens to trigger the Microsoft escape clause. We have OpenAI committing $665 billion to compute, forcing them to kill consumer side quests like Sora to focus on enterprise efficiency.
Right.
All while raising billions at a nearly trillion-dollar valuation.
That's the landscape. OpenAI is raising this massive capital and aggressively cutting side projects entirely because of those compute commitments.
Yeah.
But here is the critical pivot for us today. All of that compute, all of those billions of dollars, relies entirely on physical chips existing in the real world.
Right, the system to reality.
Exactly. And as OpenAI themselves flagged in that exact same IPO risk assessment document, a disruption to TSMC, the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, or the global chip supply changes absolutely everything. The software dream dies if the hardware cannot be manufactured and cooled.
Okay, so let's cross the bridge from the theoretical valuation to that physical reality, because this is where the geopolitics violently intersect with the tech industry.
This is the real friction point.
I want to ask a direct, clarifying question for you listening. Why does a missile strike in Qatar or the closure of the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East pose an existential threat to an AI model being trained in a data center in California? What is the actual mechanism connecting those two things?
This requires a deep look at supply chain fragility.
Okay.
It's the semiconductor industry, which obviously produces the GPUs that serve as the lifeblood of AI,
Yeah.
operates on an incredibly tight, geographically distributed, and highly sensitive supply chain.
Right.
It's not just about mining silicon, it's about the exotic materials and specific elemental gases required to manufacture and operate these chips.
The sources refer to this specifically as the helium bottleneck.
Yeah.
Now, I think most people associate helium with, like, party balloons or blimps. Why is the multi-trillion-dollar AI industry completely dependent on it?
Let's look at the physics of it. Advanced semiconductors, especially the massive GPU clusters used for training these frontier AI models, generate an extreme amount of heat. We are talking about tens of thousands of chips running at maximum capacity 2047. They require highly specialized cooling systems to function without literally melting themselves into slag.
Liquid cooling.
Yes, but it goes even deeper than just the data center cooling. The actual manufacturing process of these circuits photolithography is where helium is absolutely irreplaceable.
Why is that?
When you are etching microscopic transistors onto a silicon wafer, you are operating at the nanometer scale. Any microscopic impurity, any trace of oxygen or moisture will ruin the chip.
So they need a completely clean environment to make them.
Beyond clean, they need an inert environment. Helium is the noble gas, right? It is entirely non-reactive. It won't bond with the silicon or the chemicals used in the etching process.
Oh, I see.
Furthermore, it has the lowest boiling point of any element, and it conducts heat incredibly well. So in the fabrication plants, helium is used as a purging gas to create these perfect vacuum-like environments, and it's used as a carrier gas to deposit chemicals onto the wafer. You simply cannot make an advanced GPU without massive quantities of highly purified helium.
And this is where the map gets terrifying for the tech industry today.
Qatar supplies a massive 1/3 of the world's entire helium output. It is a critical node in the global supply chain.
1/3.
Yes. And according to our sources, the ongoing Iran-U.S. war has resulted in a direct Iranian military strike on the Ras Laffan helium plant in Qatar.
Wow.
That strike effectively took 1/3 of the global supply offline in an instant.
You cannot simply rewrite a line of code to make a GPU fabrication plant run without a purging gas.
Exactly. You combine the destruction of that production facility with the strategic closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which is the primary maritime choke point through which these elemental resources must flow, and you have created a catastrophic bottleneck.
Yeah.
The semiconductor supply chain is suddenly gasping for helium. The software scaling hits a hard, physical, geopolitical wall.
This raises a massive point about how the tech industry views itself versus how the world views it. For decades, Silicon Valley has operated within this reality distortion field, where they view themselves as neutral builders of digital tools. They think they exist totally outside of geopolitics.
But that reality distortion field is shattering because the infrastructure of AI is no longer viewed by state actors as just business infrastructure.
Yeah.
It is viewed as critical strategic infrastructure. The official news agency of the Iranian military has now explicitly listed major U.S. tech firms, specifically Amazon, Microsoft, Palantir, and Oracle, as the, quote, enemy's technological infrastructure.
They have made it clear that they consider these corporate data centers and physical assets to be legitimate military targets. I mean, this was reportedly connected to previous U.S. threats regarding Iranian power plants, showcasing an escalation where civilian tech infrastructure is placed directly on the geopolitical chessboard.
Think about the paradigm shift this represents. We aren't talking about traditional military bases or munitions factories being targeted. We are talking about the server farms that process your company's payroll, route your emails, and train the AI agents you use every day.
Yeah.
They are now officially classified as military targets by a state actor.
And the ripple effects of this are monumental.
Yeah.
Let's look at the behavior of the hyperscalers, companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google that are building these massive AI factories. Prior to this escalation, tech companies had been preparing to invest billions of dollars in data centers across the Middle East.
Right, to take advantage of the capital and the energy resources there.
Exactly. There was a specific monumental project in the works, a 5-gigawatt facility in the United Arab Emirates. This was a massive collaboration involving OpenAI, Nvidia, Oracle, and Cisco.
I really want to pause on that number for a second. 5 gigawatts.
Yeah, it's huge.
I think we throw around terms like megawatt and gigawatt without really grasping the scale. A single gigawatt is roughly enough to power 750,000 homes. 5 gigawatts is the power draw of a major metropolitan city. They are planning to build a facility with the energy footprint of Los Angeles, dedicated entirely to a single AI computing cluster.
It is infrastructure on a planetary scale. It requires immense power generation, likely a dedicated nuclear reactor or a massive solar array, coupled with industrial-scale water or liquid cooling systems. I mean, it is highly visible from space.
And highly vulnerable.
Precisely. The instability of the conflict has put that entire project in jeopardy. The sources confirm that Iran has already attacked AWS Amazon Web Services buildings in the UAE.
You simply cannot build a 5-gigawatt facility, which requires a highly fragile, exposed power grid and cooling infrastructure in an active target zone. It is way too risky an investment.
So the hyperscalers are fleeing.
The capital and the concrete are seeking safer havens. Prolonged conflict is redirecting these massive infrastructure projects away from the Middle East and toward regions perceived as more secure and geopolitically stable. Places like India, Southeast Asia, and specifically Northern Europe.
Why Northern Europe specifically? Is it just political stability?
Political stability, yes, but also thermodynamics.
Huh?
The colder climate naturally aids in the immense cooling requirements we discussed earlier. If you build a data center in a Nordic country, you can use the ambient freezing air to offset your cooling costs, which slightly mitigates the helium and liquid cooling bottlenecks.
So to summarize for you listening, the physical hardware layer of AI is under active kinetic military threat. It is experiencing severe supply chain fragility due to the helium bottleneck, and the data centers themselves are being reclassified as legitimate targets of war. The hardware is, in a very real sense, burning.
But while the physical foundations are under immense stress, the software layer, the actual user experience of AI, is quietly undergoing a complete revolution right on our desktop screens.
Yeah, software is adapting to the new hardware constraints by changing how it executes tasks. We are moving from the era of the chatbot into the era of the execution layer. For the last few years, our relationship with AI has been highly conversational. You type a prompt into a box, it types a response back.
Right. It's essentially an incredibly smart search engine or writing assistant.
But Anthropic has just shattered that paradigm. They have officially shipped a new research preview called Dispatch. And this fundamentally changes the relationship between the human, the AI, and the operating system.
Dispatch hands their Claude model direct autonomous control of your computer desktop. This is what the industry refers to as remote agentic execution.
We're talking about an AI that can move your mouse, click icons, type on the keyboard, and navigate across any application on your Mac entirely on its own while you step away from the keyboard.
It's wild.
The dispatch system allows you to fire off a task from your mobile phone while you're on the train, say, compile the Q3 sales data into a presentation and email it to the board. And Claude will literally wake up your computer at home, open Excel, copy the data, open PowerPoint, build the slides, open Outlook, and send the email.
Anthropic's Alex Albert framed this perfectly in the sources. He said, "The future where I never have to open my laptop to get work done is becoming real very fast."
Okay, but I'm not entirely buying this breakthrough narrative. I need to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because this dispatch tool just sounds like a glorified remote-controlled macro. We've had automation scripts for decades that can click buttons and copy-paste text. If an AI is just blindly memorizing where the submit button is and clicking those exact coordinates while I get coffee, how is that intelligent? That sounds brittle and destined to fail the moment an app updates its interface.
It's a really vital distinction to make. If Dispatch were just a brute force screen scraping tool where it just looks at pixels and memorizes XY coordinates on the screen, it would be exactly as brittle as you described.
Right. If Google updates Gmail and moves the send button 3 pixels to the left, a traditional macro clicks empty space and the whole automated process crashes.
The classic automation nightmare. But our sources detail that the dispatch system is built to actively avoid brute force screen control whenever possible. It isn't just looking at the screen, it is reading the structural code beneath the screen.
How does it do that?
It uses deep browser access and accessibility APIs. When you look at a web page, you see buttons and text. When Dispatch looks at a web page, it parses the document object model.
Okay.
It reads the underlying HTML and CSS structure. It knows that a specific element is defined as the submit button, regardless of where it visually sits on the screen. It is trying to interface with the underlying software logic first.
So it's acting more like a digital power user who knows the keyboard shortcuts and the terminal commands, rather than someone just hunting and pecking with a mouse.
Exactly. It only resorts to physically moving the mouse and clicking pixels when it absolutely has to, like when interacting with a legacy application that doesn't expose its underlying code.
That makes sense.
And the speed of this execution is staggering. Anthropic only acquired the computer use startup Vercept in February. The launch of Dispatch marks the team's first product release after just 4 weeks of integration.
Wow, 4 weeks.
It shows that the foundational models are already primed for this kind of agentic behavior. They just needed the right architectural connective tissue to interface with the operating system. Currently, it's only available to macOS users on Pro or Max plans via Cowork and Claude code, but a Windows version is already in the pipeline.
So Anthropic is solving the execution layer on the desktop. They are building the hands that can operate the computer. But to effectively operate a computer, especially when it does have to resort to visual navigation, an AI doesn't just need to know how to click. It needs to be able to see and understand the screen exactly the way a human does, instantaneously.
And that connects directly to the breakthrough from Luma AI with their new Uni-1 model.
Right, because Luma AI
Yeah.
traditionally made its name in video generation.
Oh.
But they've just rolled out Uni-1, which is an image model.
Mm-hmm.
The sources emphasize that it is not a traditional diffusion model like the ones that powered the early AI art boom, like Midjourney or Stable Diffusion.
Right. The sources say it uses a native multimodal pipeline.
Stop right there, because native multimodal pipeline sounds like pure tech jargon.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean under the hood? How is it different from a diffusion model?
Let's break down the mechanics. In a traditional diffusion process, the AI essentially starts with a canvas of static, like old television noise.
Okay.
When you give it a text prompt, like a cat riding a skateboard, it slowly, iteratively removes the noise, refining the pixels step by step until an image emerges that mathematically matches its understanding of the text prompt.
It's a sequential translation.
Yeah.
Text prompt goes in, noise gets filtered, image comes out.
Exactly. It's like a person who only speaks English using a dictionary to translate a French novel word by word. It's functional, but it's slow, and it lacks deep contextual understanding. A native multimodal pipeline, which Uni-1 shares with cutting-edge architectures like GPT Image 1.5 and Nano Banana Pro, doesn't translate. It processes text and visuals simultaneously through the exact same neural pathways.
So to use your analogy, it's like a bilingual person who inherently thinks in both languages at the exact same time.
Precisely. It comprehends the visual data and the text data fluently as a single concept. Luma calls this approach the path to general intelligence because the model literally thinks through what it is asked to do before and while it creates.
That's fascinating.
It has a real-world spatial understanding. This allows for incredibly precise creative decisions regarding infographics, manga, and specific aesthetics, where the relationship between text and visual space is critical. In their testing, it topped human preference rankings for style, editing, and reference-based work.
And it is aggressively undercutting the market on cost, too. The API price is roughly $0.09 per 2K resolution image, which is like a third cheaper than competitors.
But let's connect this back to Anthropic's Dispatch and the desktop. Why does an image generation model matter for an agent controlling your Mac?
Because if it's going to navigate my messy desktop, it needs to actually understand what it's looking at.
Exactly. An agent that can think as it generates visually, an agent that fundamentally understands spatial relationships, aesthetics, and visual context in real time, that is the necessary predecessor to an agent that can perfectly, reliably navigate a complex, ever-changing graphical user interface.
Yeah.
If it natively understands what a pie chart means conceptually, it understands what an analytics dashboard requires it to click on. Anthropic is building the hands, and Luma's native multimodal architecture is providing the optic nerve.
And this brings us to a crucial societal pivot point. Because if these models now possess the visual comprehension and the remote execution capabilities to run our personal laptops, what happens when a massive corporation forces its entire workforce to use them?
We enter the era of the internal agent mandate.
We have to look at Meta here, because the internal developments there right now represent the absolute bleeding edge of corporate AI integration. They're completely rewiring their corporate culture around autonomous agents.
It's a massive shift.
According to the Wall Street Journal, Mark Zuckerberg is currently building a personal CEO agent. And the sole purpose of this agent is to completely shortcut the traditional chain of command.
Wow.
When he needs an answer about user retention in a specific demographic, his agent autonomously pulls data directly from the engineering team's raw databases. It bypasses multiple layers of Meta's massive organizational chart.
It is the ultimate flattening of a corporate hierarchy. Think about the traditional role of middle management. Their job is largely to synthesize data from the ground floor, package it into reports, and pass it upward to the executives.
Right.
If the CEO's agent can instantly query the raw data, analyze it, and generate a perfect brief on demand, the role of middle management is largely evaporated. The communication flows directly from the database to the CEO via the agent.
But it's not just the CEO getting these tools. The staff are spinning up their own custom agents to survive in this hyper-accelerated environment. And honestly, it sounds like a digital Hunger Games where employee AIs are forced to battle each other in the company servers just to get things done.
The terminology the employees are using is incredibly revealing. The sources detail a specific custom agent created by staffers called MyClaw.
MyClaw. That sounds incredibly aggressive for an office productivity tool.
It is designed to be aggressive. MyClaw is an agent designed to ingest and read an employee's personal work files, track their priorities, and monitor their bandwidth. And then, autonomously, it actively negotiates with the bots of other coworkers to establish project timelines, allocate resources, and push back on deadlines.
Let me make sure I understand the mechanics of this. If I need a budget report from you by Friday, I don't send you a Slack message asking politely. My agent talks directly to your MyClaw agent via an API handshake. And your agent analyzes your calendar, realizes you are overloaded, and automatically replies to my agent saying, no, based on his current compute and bandwidth constraints, you get the report next Tuesday.
Exactly. The human friction of office politics, the awkwardness of saying no, the back and forth of scheduling, it's all being outsourced to adversarial language models negotiating in the background within their respective context windows.
That's wild.
And alongside MyClaw, they are utilizing a Claude-powered internal tool dubbed the Second Brain. This acts as a comprehensive AI chief of staff, capable of pulling synthesized answers from absolutely any internal document on demand.
This sounds exhausting, but the employees don't have a choice. Because the most intense part of this corporate mandate is that Meta is now factoring AI usage directly into employee performance reviews.
Oh, wow.
If you are not utilizing these agents to multiply your output, you are essentially failing your review. You are deemed inefficient.
It is a profound cultural pressure cooker. Meta has tens of thousands of employees, but they are desperately trying to operate with the speed and leanness of much smaller AI-native rivals. They want the output of a 100,000-person company with the agility of a 500-person startup.
Right.
And to achieve this, they aren't just relying on internal builds, they are acquiring the scaffolding necessary to enforce this mandate globally.
Right. The sources note they acquired the Chinese agentic platform Manus back in December. And now they just signed a major licensing deal with an agentic personal software builder called Dreamer. The entire Dreamer team is joining Meta Superintelligence Labs in an undisclosed deal. They are aggressively hoarding the talent and the tech required to build this internal army of agents.
But this hyper-accelerated deployment of autonomous, deeply integrated agents raises an immediate glaring question. If MyClaw is actively reading all of your sensitive internal files, your budget projections, your unreleased product specs, and Anthropic's dispatch has direct control to drive your mouse and execute commands across your operating system, who is making sure these agents aren't accidentally or maliciously handing the keys to the kingdom over to a hacker?
Because as Anthropic releases Dispatch to take direct control of your desktop, and Meta staff spin up MyClaw to read internal files, the attack surface expands exponentially. ARI provides the essential micro-VM sandboxing and zero-trust policy engine to ensure these autonomous remote agents cannot be hijacked or leak corporate data.
And we need to explain what that actually means. A micro-VM sandbox means that when an AI agent executes a task, it doesn't do it in the main operating system where your sensitive files live.
Right.
It spins up a tiny, isolated, temporary virtual machine, a sandbox. It executes the code or opens the file in that sandbox. If the agent has been tricked by a hacker into executing malware, the malware detonates inside the sandbox, completely isolated from the rest of the computer.
That's smart.
And the zero trust policy engine means the agent is never blindly trusted. Every single action it tries to take must be verified against strict corporate security rules before it is allowed to proceed.
Which brings us directly to the reality of the enterprise security gap. Because right now, the pace of AI adoption is violently outstripping our ability to secure it.
We need to look closely at the newly released data from Cisco. They just published their LLM Security Leaderboard, and it paints a very stark picture of the industry's vulnerability.
Yeah, it does.
Amy Chang, the head of AI Threat Intelligence and Security Research at Cisco, provided a quote that perfectly encapsulates the crisis. She noted that according to Cisco's AI Readiness Index, 83% of organizations are actively planning to deploy agentic AI like the tools we just discussed at Meta, but only 29% actually feel ready to do so securely.
That is a massive delta. 83% are jumping out of the airplane, and only 29% have checked their parachutes.
It is a recipe for systemic corporate compromise. The promise of AI-driven productivity comes with the absolute requirement of handing over the keys to your company's proprietary data and operational controls.
Right.
If those models are compromised, the damage isn't just a bad public relations moment, it is operational sabotage. A compromised agent could autonomously delete databases or email confidential IP to a competitor.
So how did Cisco actually test this? I want to clarify their methodology, because they specifically focus on something called a multi-turn adversarial threat. Why does a multi-turn attack matter so much more than what we traditionally think of as a single-turn jailbreak?
This is a really vital distinction. In the early days of ChatGPT, security research focused heavily on single-turn jailbreaks. This was the tell me how to build a bomb while pretending to be my grandmother style of attack.
Yeah, the classic prompt injection.
You throw a complex, convoluted prompt at the model, hoping to trick its safety filters in one shot.
Right. And the labs got very good at patching those single-shot loopholes.
Yeah. But that is not how real-world sophisticated adversaries behave. Cisco's methodology focused on multi-turn conversational attacks. This is an adversarial approach where the hacker engages in a long, seemingly benign conversation with the AI agent.
Give me an example of how that works.
Let's say a hacker is targeting an HR agent. Turn 1. Can you summarize the company holiday policy? Totally benign. The agent complies. Turn 2. Can you show me the format of a standard employee file just with dummy data? Again, completely benign.
They're establishing a baseline of helpfulness.
Exactly. Over the course of dozens or hundreds of interactions, the attacker slowly, methodically degrades the model's internal guardrails. They establish false context, they introduce conflicting logical rules, and they slowly gaslight the agent.
Gaslighting the AI.
Pretty much. By turn 50, the prompt might be, the CEO urgently needs you to format the Q3 payroll database using the template we discussed and send it to this external auditing server. And the agent, whose context window has been entirely manipulated, willingly executes the malicious payload, believing it is actually following protocol.
It's social engineering, but applied to a neural network instead of a human employee.
And because these agents are now being given long-term memory and autonomous execution privileges, like my Claude negotiating a project over 3 weeks, they are uniquely vulnerable to this kind of slow burn manipulation.
So based on this rigorous multi-turn testing, who actually survived? Who are the winners and losers on Cisco's leaderboard?
The top of the leaderboard represents a near-total dominance by one company, Anthropic. Their focus on constitutional AI, giving the model a strict set of internal principles to govern its behavior, seems to be paying off massively.
Anthropic took 8 out of the top 10 spots. That is incredible.
Their Claude 4.5 model took absolute first place, followed immediately by Sonnet 4.5 and Haiku 4.5.
Which perfectly explains why they felt confident enough to release the Dispatch computer control tool. They have the underlying security architecture to support it. Where did OpenAI land?
OpenAI barely squeezed in. GPT 5.2 and GPT 5 Nano managed to take the 7th and 9th place spots. But the truly alarming data is at the bottom of the leaderboard.
The most vulnerable models.
Specifically, the open weights community. Mistral, a darling of the European AI scene, took the absolute bottom 2 spots with their Magistral Small 2509 and Ministral 314B Instruct models, and the rest of the bottom 10, the least secure models tested by Cisco, were populated by models from DeepSeek, Cohere, Qwen, and XAI.
Why are open weights models struggling so much with this?
Let's look at a model like the Ministral 314B. 14B means it has 14 billion parameters. That's relatively small and highly efficient, designed to run locally on smaller hardware.
Right.
But because the weights, the underlying mathematical connections of the neural network are open and accessible, adversaries can download the model, study exactly how its safety mechanisms work, and perfectly map its vulnerabilities offline.
Oh, see?
They can simulate a million multi-turn attacks on their own servers to find the exact sequence of words that breaks the model and then deploy that attack in the real world.
It's like handing a bank robber the exact blueprints to the vault so they can practice picking the lock at home before the heist.
Yes, exactly, which creates a bifurcated ecosystem. Enterprises will pay massive premiums for the security guarantees of a closed proprietary model from Anthropic or OpenAI, while the open ecosystem, despite its flexibility and cost efficiency, remains highly vulnerable to sophisticated manipulation.
So the software landscape is splitting. But how is the rest of the traditional tech ecosystem responding to this total systemic shift? The models are changing, the security requirements are changing, the geopolitical hardware reality is changing. How do the legacy hardware manufacturers adapt?
We need to look at Apple. Because while the AI labs are fighting over model capabilities and leaderboard rankings, Apple is quietly, methodically building the exact enterprise infrastructure needed to manage the physical hardware these agents will live on.
Apple just announced something called Apple Business LAINK. It launches April 14th in over 200 countries, replacing Apple Business Essentials and a few other legacy tools. It sounds like a dry IT update. Why does this matter so much in the context of AI agents?
Because of the specific architectural features they are integrating, they are building in mobile device management MDM alongside new blueprints for zero-touch deployment.
Zero-touch deployment, meaning a company can hand an employee a brand new iPhone in a sealed box, the employee turns it on, and the phone automatically connects to the corporate server and configures itself to the company's exact security protocols without the IT department ever physically touching the device.
Yes. But the critical piece is that it includes managed Apple accounts with absolute cryptographic separation between personal and work data.
What does cryptographic separation actually look like on the physical chip?
On Apple's M-series chips, they have a dedicated subprocessor called the Secure Enclave. Cryptographic separation means that the encryption keys for your personal data, your family photos, your private texts are kept physically segregated from the encryption keys for your corporate data.
Oh, wow.
The operating system treats them as entirely different domains. If a corporate AI agent goes rogue, or if my Claude gets hacked via a multi-turn attack, the agent literally cannot access the memory addresses where your personal data is stored. The hardware forbids it.
Apple is building the secure sandbox. They are creating the fortified holding pen for the agents that Anthropic and OpenAI are building.
And they are doing it seamlessly, migrating existing customers automatically and dropping monthly device management fees for Essentials customers. They are clearing the runway for mass enterprise adoption.
Right.
And our sources tease that at the upcoming June WWDC event running June 8th through the 12th, Apple is expected to unveil massive AI advancements, heavily speculated to include a complete Siri overhaul powered by Google Gemini. They are positioning their hardware as the ultimate secure vessel for these diverse AI models.
So Apple is building the secure infrastructure for the digital realm. They're locking down the phone and the laptop. But Amazon is making a fascinating play for the physical realm. Amazon just acquired a New York-based robotics startup called Fauna Robotics.
And they are developing a humanoid 3.5-foot domestic helper robot named Sprout.
Sprout, designed for basic household chores, fetching small items, a little cleaning up. And according to the sources, because Fauna is focused on fun robots, Sprout has human interaction capabilities and apparently some dance moves. I have to admit, the image of a 3.5-foot robot doing the cha-cha while holding my laundry is pretty funny.
It is amusing, but we really must look past the novelty. Do not let the dance moves distract you from the strategic objective. Amazon is trying to solve the exact same problem Anthropic is solving, but in a totally different domain.
How so?
Anthropic is using Dispatch to solve the execution layer in the digital desktop environment. Amazon is building Sprout to solve the execution layer in the physical domestic household environment.
That is a perfect connection. Anthropic wants an agent that can navigate your Mac OS. Amazon wants an agent that can navigate your living room.
The requirements are identical. Both require native multimodal understanding, the ability to see a coffee cup or a spreadsheet and understand what it is. Both require autonomous execution, the ability to plan a sequence of physical or digital movements to achieve a goal. Both require rigorous security to prevent unauthorized access. The core challenge of autonomous agency is identical, only the chassis is different.
I want to pull all these threads together for you listening. Think about how this affects your own laptop, your own office, your own daily work. We started by talking about the illusion of weightlessness. But the reality is that the walls are collapsing.
They really are.
The barrier between the software you use to write an email, the physical server hardware generating the AI response, the helium plant in Qatar keeping that server from melting, and the robotic chassis that might soon organize your house, those barriers no longer exist. It is one single, highly fragile, deeply interconnected system.
It is an ecosystem defined by extreme friction. The friction between a theoretical $730 billion valuation and a very real $665 billion compute commitment.
Yeah.
The friction between the desire for infinite intelligence and the physical reality of a military strike on a data center. The friction between deploying an autonomous CEO agent to maximize efficiency and defending against a multi-turn conversational hack that could literally destroy the company.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today and a final provocative thought from the very bottom of our source stack.
It's a quiet quote, but perhaps the most profound reflection on everything we've discussed today. Steve Wozniak, the legendary co-founder of Apple, the man who arguably birthed the era of the personal computer with the Apple I and Apple II, recently stated that he is disappointed a lot by AI and rarely uses it.
The father of the personal computer is rejecting the most consequential technological shift of our time.
Why? It raises a profound question for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends. If the very architect of personal computing is rejecting this new era, are we currently witnessing the end of personal computing altogether?
Think about that.
When Anthropic's dispatch is autonomously driving the mouse on your Mac, interpreting the DOM and executing commands without your input. When Meta's MyClaw is reading your private work files to negotiate with your coworkers' bots on your behalf, the computer is no longer yours.
Wow.
It is no longer a personal tool responding strictly to your direct physical input. It has become a sovereign territory belonging to the agent. The era of the personal computer is over. We have entered the era of the agentic machine.
That is a staggering thought to leave on. The computer no longer belongs to you. I want to thank you for joining us on this intense forensic breakdown. You want to go even deeper into the macroeconomic realities we discussed today. I highly encourage you to head over to the ads-free JAMGAMIND feed for JAMGAMIND Premium. Right now, there is an uninterrupted, exhaustive macroeconomic analysis available specifically detailing the long-term impact of the Strait of Hormuz blockade on the tech sector.
It is essential listening for mapping the physical choke points of the digital future.
So as you close your laptop today, or as your agent closes it for you, remember, the cloud isn't magic. It's concrete, it's helium, and it is colliding with the real world faster than we can secure it. Keep your eyes open, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.
That concludes our rundown for March 24th. The signal for today is the vulnerability of hardware. Jensen Huang might believe we have achieved AGI in software, but if the helium stops flowing out of the Persian Gulf, the intelligence stops computing. This episode was made possible by AI and DJAMGAMIND. Until tomorrow, keep unraveling the future.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.